The Activision Blizzard deal is progressing well according to Phil Spencer. Console exclusivity, it has been going away and it will continue to go away. And Pentiment gets an official release date. All right, guys, before we get into this, I have 4 months to hit my goal of 10,000 subscribers. I see a lot of you are new to this channel. If you are, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you enjoy this video. So as we move through the summer, we are getting closer to the finalization of the Activision Blizzard deal. Whether it's going to close in 2022 or early 2023, that is still yet to be foreseen. I think at the end of this month, we will have a lot more information and a lot more news, especially if the FTC approves the deal in terms of how fast this deal is going to close and if it can get done by the end of this year. And I think it will be huge if it can get done by the end of this year, especially because they will be able to just drop in a bunch of games into Xbox Game Pass. Now, Phil Spencer had an interview and he was talking about the Activision Blizzard deal. And I want to go over the article because he says some pretty interesting things here in terms of the deal itself, as well as what he thinks about console exclusivity and exclusive titles in general. So he was asked about the deal, and this is the first big $70 billion deal he's ever made. And he says here, I feel good about the progress that we've been making, but I go into the process supportive of people who maybe aren't as close to the gaming industry, asking good, hard questions about what is our intent? What does this mean? If you play it out over 5 years, is this constricting a market? Is it growing a market? I've never done a $7 billion deal, so I don't know what my confidence means. I will say the discussions we've been having seem positive. So there's a couple of things here. I mean, obviously people look at this deal, they see it's $70 billion. They see it's for a company as big as Activision Blizzard and just how big some of the titles they have within those studios that have so many different players across the entire world on different platforms playing these games. They make some of the most money in the world in terms of their games, especially with like Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. And people are obviously going to be questioning, what does it mean for the entirety of the industry? Are you going to take those games? Are you going to hold them only to the Xbox ecosystem, only to Xbox? And will that either hold the market back or will it grow it? And obviously from what we've heard so far from Xbox is they are keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation. And I think from what we can see right now, if you are looking at Xbox and how they've handled these Bethesda deals, I think it's growing the market. And you may say they don't put their new games onto PlayStation, so how can that be? And the fact of the matter is, if you look at what happened with Bethesda, you look what happened with Starfield before Microsoft purchased Bethesda, there were those talks that PlayStation was trying to get Starfield exclusive to the platform, exclusive to PlayStation. And obviously we know what turned out. Xbox said that's not happening, and they went in and purchased the entire development studio. And if you compare the two strategies going forward, PlayStation versus Xbox, PlayStation's strategy definitely constricts the market more so than Xbox's strategy, as they have the ecosystem, they put games on multiple different platforms, and PC being such a massive platform where they have the most amount of players, keeping games on PC is a huge thing for continuing to grow the market. Now, continuing on here, they're talking about what was going on at Activision Blizzard with all of the issues that occurred before they purchased the company itself and the employees, the harassment, all of that type of stuff, how Xbox is going to handle that. And they know they're going to have to turn things around and deal with that once they actually acquire Activision Blizzard. And Phil Spencer says here, I believe they're committed to that. And he's talking about actually Activision Blizzard coming up with their plans and what they're going to be able to do in order to combat the negative stuff that was going on. They actually said that they looked at what they were planning on doing before they went ahead with the deal. So I'm guessing because of what the plans were, because of what they presented to them, they were happy with that, and they're going to be able to expand on that and make it even better for the employees once they actually get into Xbox. He says here, when I look at the work they're doing now, there's always more that can be done, but I believe from the studio leaders there that I know very well, some of them former Xbox members, that they're committed to this journey, and I applaud that regardless of the deal. And we've even seen unions starting to form at Activision Blizzard because of what has been going on, specifically the QA workers at Raven Software. And Phil Spencer says here, I've never run an organization that has unions in it, but what I can say in working through this is we recognize workers need to feel safe and heard and compensated fairly in order to do great work. We definitely see a need to support the workers and the outcomes that they want to have. So, I mean, Microsoft right now are obviously presenting that they are definitely on board with unions and all that type of stuff. If they formed unions, they will honor those unions once the deal closes. And they're saying that because they want the deal to close, but you also kind of have to believe what they said, because Phil Spencer has been pretty honorable and pretty good with his word when he talks about this type of stuff. But at the end of the day, people arguing against this deal going through, it's the biggest thing of all. that will be a big positive for the gaming industry, is moving away from the environment that was at Activision Blizzard and then going into Xbox. And Xbox and Microsoft being one of the more desirable companies to work for, that's just going to be a win for everybody. And then on top of that, the more resources that they will even have on top of what they already had with Activision Blizzard to continue to create the games, to hopefully continue to make more IPs and focus on more games than just Call of Duty. I think that's going to also be a big plus. And then we get in here to exclusivity, something that on my channel, I've talked about this multiple times for over a year, I would say, where I've gotten pushback on this for people arguing against it, but I still believe it, and Phil Spencer seems to be all along the same lines as me when it comes to this type of stuff, or I seem to be on the same page as Phil Spencer, and that is that console exclusivity in general, and if it's not within the ecosystem, being locked to a singular platform is going to be something we are seeing so much less of going forward. It's not a winning business model anymore. And I mean, if you look at what PlayStation is doing, they're realizing this. They are transitioning away from that as they're releasing more games onto PC, as they launch their PlayStation PC webpage and all that type of stuff to let people know that their games are available on PC. And I think sooner rather than later, they're going to start releasing their big first-party games day one or very soon after they release on PC at the same time they release it to the PlayStation 5. But as of right now, they're kind of trying to get as much out of that old strategy of console exclusivity as they can, try to suck as much money out of the consumers right now before they make that whole transition to having that ecosystem where games launch on multiple platforms, because they're working on that right now in the background. It's very, very obvious. And we even look at the PlayStation Plus premium stuff that's going on with the 3 different tiers and how subscription that is taking over the market. And Phil Spencer talks about exclusivity and says it's something we're just going to see less and less of. Maybe you happen in your household to buy an Xbox and I buy a PlayStation, and our kids want to play together and they can't because we bought the wrong piece of plastic to plug into our television. And it's funny that he comments particularly on the Xbox and PlayStation and the crossplay. As we know, PlayStation was against crossplay initially with the Epic versus Apple documents that came out, where they had their whole compensation plan that they thought that they deserved to be compensated for giving more users to games that are crossplay if they weren't making a certain amount of money, if they weren't spending enough money within the PlayStation network. And PlayStation eventually broke down, gave into crossplay. And we don't know if that deal is in place. I would guess it isn't in place, but that's what we're seeing right now with the video game industry. PlayStation going to continue to break down and follow in the footsteps of Xbox when it comes to the ecosystem, when it comes to kind of getting rid of the console exclusivity. Phil Spencer continues here saying, we really love to be able to bring more players in, reducing friction, making people feel safe, secure when they're playing, allowing them to find their friends, play with their friends regardless of what device. I think in the long run, that is good for this industry, and maybe in the short run, there's some people and some companies that don't love it. But I think as we get over the hump and see where this industry can continue to grow, it proves out to be true. And yeah, in the long run, it is good for the industry, but it is also good for the pocketbook for these companies. That's the bottom line. They wouldn't be making these big adjustments if they weren't making more money from it. And when you look at the short-term style of things, it does take a little bit of time for it to kick off. We know Game Pass right now, 25 million plus subscribers. It continues to grow. And obviously, Game Pass and Xbox, they aren't at the pinnacle of how much money they're going to be making with Xbox Game Pass and with their ecosystem. I'm sure they're making money right now, but this is going to be a work in progress for a long time. But once the numbers hit a certain amount, it's going to be very hard to compete with Xbox and with the ecosystem, with the amount of subscribers they have, the amount of content that they have in there, and the amount of money that they're raking in. They're just going to have more money to spend to bring more value to the service. So we'll see how this all plays out going forward in terms of these subscription services and how PlayStation kind of adjusts with the industry, how they are going to be able to improve their subscription service to compete with Game Pass. But I think right now, Xbox is definitely in the front when it comes to the future of gaming and who's going to be the leader in the next 10 years or so. But a couple of things, I mean, the Activision Blizzard deal has progress. It's going forward. And like I said, it'll be very interesting to see where we are at the end of August with the FTC and how that affects when this deal is going to close. And then console exclusivity, I've talked about it. Phil Spencer's talked about it. It is inevitable. If you're somebody out there who still is living and dying based off of games being locked to a particular singular console, it's going away. And it's going to go away a lot faster than I think we expect. All right, moving over here to Pentiment. Pentiment is a game that was announced at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. It is from a small team from Obsidian. It is a very cool art style, narrative driven style of game from what we have seen so far, and it finally got a release date, and that is going to be November 15th for the Series XS, Xbox One, Windows, PC, Steam, and obviously coming to Xbox Game Pass. And it says here, explore history in the modern time through the style of illuminated manuscripts and early modern woodcuts. And you can see here the kind of graphics and what they're doing. Very, very narrative driven. Pentiment is a narrative adventure game set in the 16th century Upper Bavaria in the time of the Holy Roman Empire. And you play as Andreas Mahler, who is a very clever journeyman artist who gets caught up in a series of murders and scandals that span 25 years in the fictional town of Tassing and Carousel Abbey. Now, in terms of what this game is, you just make a bunch of choices. You go and you investigate suspects. You try to figure out who committed these murders, and everything you're going to be doing in here has consequences. So if this is the type of game you're into, if you want to just sit back and have a looks like a very interesting narrative game, it probably will have a very good story, and everything you do within the game is going to have an effect on the outcome. This could be the one for you. And it's only $20 if you want to buy it. So it's not a big AAA game. It's from a small amount of developers from Obsidian, but it is coming out in November 15th, and it counts as a first-party Xbox game coming in 2022. So the narrative, I guess, that there are 0 first-party Xbox games, or at least 0 new first-party Xbox games coming in 2022, because there was also the Forza Horizon expansion and that type of stuff. I guess that's no more, because this game is releasing. That's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Phil Spencer's comments on the deal, exclusivity. Are you going to be playing Pentiment? Are you excited for it? If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.